All right. Well, welcome, Adriana, to This is 50 Freedom Through Passions. You and I met through Instagram, and I was mentioning to you, I think I've got more friends now through Instagram than I do actually in real life. It seems to be such a great place to connect with like-minded women, and I'm super glad that I have had the opportunity to meet you. Um, During our pre-call, you inspired me so much of just about how you have taken this your whole life and just it's just been a constant evolution of things that you wanted to create for yourself and this life that you wanted to create for yourself. And it was such a beautiful story that I think it's important that we share that story today so that people see that, continuing to grow and evolve in your life and what it takes to do something like that only leads to great things, to that freedom that everybody's looking for. And so freedom, whether it's freedom, time freedom, location freedom, freedom to just be able to run your own business, whatever the case may be. And I think you're a true inspiration for that. So, but before we get into the whole thing, give us a little bit about your backstory and we'll go from there.
Well, hello, and thank you for hosting me. This is such a beautiful introduction. Thank you very much. I'm not sure I deserve all the accolades, but
You do.
but I will try. Um, I will try to talk a little bit about my personal evolution, I guess, and my journey through life. So yes, I am an immigrant. I arrived to the United States at the ripe age of 22 years old, all by myself, with a few dollars in my pocket. And I have decided to study in the United States, and I went to college here. And just as I was ready to go back to Poland, I'm originally from Poland. So I was ready to go back to Poland after finishing studying here. I got my first job offer in finance. And I discovered a completely different world and fell in love with it, and then continued doing it for close to 10 years. And then my life took a turn, and I got married, and I had a child, and my child required some extra attention. And so I couldn't go back to working crazy hours, 12, 14-hour shifts, and continuing in finance. And I decided to pivot. And while I was taking care of my child, I had started a real estate investment business, which I had continued working in for close to 17 years. And a few years ago, I was able to sell it. And in the meantime, because I was bored with just working as a president of my real estate investment company, I had started a jewelry company because this was kind of my creative outlet, and I always have been a creative person. So on my kitchen table, I started creating these unique pieces, and then throughout my travels around the world, collected some interesting stones, and then created them into something very unique and special and one of a kind. And so that kind of took shape, and I did that for close to 10 years. And then COVID came, sales were done, stores were closing, and I decided to go back to my first love, which was wine, to which I got introduced in the 90s when I was working as a waitress in New York
Yeah.
City, paying my tuition in college, right?
Yes, of
So,
course.
so yes, kind of a little bit of a crazy journey. So I'm a Court of Masters certified sommelier. I have been consulting and working in my own business for 4 years now. But I have done work in the wine industry for close to 20 years right now. So, yeah, in a nutshell,
In a nutshell. So
in
30
a
years
nutshell,
packed into that story. It's
covered 40
amazing.
years of my
Yeah,
life.
exactly. In 3 minutes. Well
Yes.
done. Well done. So yeah, and it's such a diverse background, which I also thought was super interesting. So let's back up a little bit. You decide to come from Poland. You're 20 odd years old and you pick New York. What did you do? Just put a finger on the map, or did you have a
So
connection there that brought
right.
you to
So
New York?
I was going to take 1 year of dean's leave from my master's studies in Krakow.
Okay.
And I was just going to travel, brush up on my English, and then return and finish my master's degree.
Okay.
Um, New York was presented as an completely out of the blue by a friend of mine who was here for 6 months and offered me her couch for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I said, okay, well, why not? I never really dreamed of coming to New York, but I'm a very curious person and I love traveling. And so I decided I'll give it a chance and then, pack my bags in 6 months and go back home. And here I am. So yes,
And
just a fateful decision, hopping on the train from almost from JFK, and then making it work and doing the immigrant thing truly, working full time, studying full time, just keeping myself afloat. Through a lot of sacrifices, but also through restaurant work, discovering the world of food and fine dining and fine wine. So,
exactly, exactly. And that's such a great story. I mean, I think about, how much courage it would have taken for you to come over. You've got 2 weeks of a couch, great, but then the risk that you took in staying, it's I mean, we always feel like it's easier to just go back to that easy button and to that, to your home and to the place where, you grew up, and your own language and your own way of communicating. And so
yeah.
well done on that. So during our pre-call, I want to skip past all of your 30 years there. We'll go back and forth on it. But one thing, I asked you, I thought, well, how do you market? So now you're now a sommelier, a certified sommelier. You are running a business specifically around that, on your own, and it's something that you created. But one of the things you said to me was that when I asked you, how do you market your services? Because it's such a complicated thing in this big, flooded world of different businesses out there. And you said, necessity is the mother of all inventions, and that you create your own business. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want you to talk a little bit about your wine business that you have now, and how did you create that, and how did people see you as this expert sommelier when you didn't have 30 years behind your belt on it?
So it's a very interesting question. I think, especially for women who are not in their early 20s, women who are reinventing themselves or trying something completely new and a different stage of life, right? It is not that easy to open all the doors, especially in the hospitality industry. As you can imagine, COVID was a very difficult time, and
Hmm.
a lot of restaurants had to lay off sommeliers because, it's kind of always viewed as this exclusive
Add on.
service that you
Hmm.
offer, right?
Hmm.
Um, so definitely trying to enter this industry during and right after COVID has been difficult, not just for me, but also for a lot of seasoned professionals. So I knew that I couldn't and didn't want to work in a restaurant 6 days a week or 7 days a week. But I knew that I wanted to be close to the customers, close to the collectors, close to the people who enjoyed wine. And I'm very passionate about talking about wine and educating people about wine. So, considering that I was going to have to face this crazy steep competition with younger women and men who have all the time in the world and love to work till 2 3 a.m. in the morning and don't mind not sleeping all night long, I needed to figure out where can I carve out a little niche for myself in this industry where I could still remain self-employed but continue with my love for wine and the education and the outreach. So you mentioned we met on Instagram, and I would say Instagram and all the other social platforms are actually an excellent tool to have at our fingertips. I feel that I've met a lot of wonderful people in the industry, and not only in the industry through Instagram, but I also attend a lot of events that are specifically designed for media and trade industry, where I do a lot of networking and talk to people in the industry and exchange ideas. I also formed a group for women sommeliers who are in very similar situation as myself, who are also forging their own way in the industry, starting their own, import export businesses from different walks of life, different age groups, different educational backgrounds. It's called Gravitas Som Group. We meet every 4 to 8 weeks. I organize these educational events where we get to exchange ideas, talk to people in the industry. Zero, zero. It doesn't cost anything. You don't need to become a member. Kind of very fluid group of people. The idea behind this group was that we will provide support to one another and again exchange ideas, help one another, and build each other up.
So say the name of it again.
Gravitas
Gravitas
sommelier group, and it's
Molly Group.
women primarily in the New York and tri-state area, so New Jersey, Connecticut. um, but I know sommelier women and women in the wine industry, such as writers from all over the United States, who already expressed interest in coming to our next meeting, or when
Hmm.
they are in New York. We are New York based, but
Hmm.
we absolutely welcome everybody. So
Awesome. And so it's for women only, or does
yes,
it? Yes.
for
Okay.
women only. I have decided this because I thought that women are still a minority in this industry. Um, um, I think there was a need. There was no space such as this. There are a lot of different organizations to which we can belong, and men and women in the wine and spirits industry belong. But I thought that there wasn't a group specifically for women, local women, where we could just gather once in a while, talk to one another, help each other with whatever needs we may have in the industry, and not only. Um, yes, but it's women only. I thought
Hmm.
this was pretty important.
And how
Yeah.
many people would you say are part of this community? Off and
So
on, I
our
guess.
I tried to keep the meetings small because you want to talk to everybody, and
Sure.
we also have industry sponsors. So recently, Laura Catena was sponsoring our a meeting and introduced us to a lot of her wines and what's happening in Argentina in the wine industry. 12 to 15 people is usually where we try to keep it kind of capped, because we don't
Hmm.
want it to be a huge
Yeah,
meeting where you don't get to talk to one another, and I want to make sure that all the members know one another. It's
exactly.
important to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's back up. Where did you ever get this moxie, knowing what you said about it being a predominantly male industry?
Mhm.
Certainly, women in their 50s trying to break into this male dominated industry are also, when we're in our 50s, that does end up happening where it's sort of you're passed over for sort of the younger version, the younger model. So, when you thought during COVID, you know what, my real estate investment business, my jewelry business, it was time to pivot. I'm going to go and get more. I'm going to go into the direction of something that I really love, which is usually an event does cause us to do that. And frankly, I think COVID did help move a lot of people into a new direction that they're super happy about now. So you thought, okay, so how will I break into this world? Um, you had to go back, get an accreditation. Like, walk me through your thinking, like where the moxie behind your thinking, right? Okay, I'm gonna break into this male dominated world and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna get started by doing this. Like, walk me through what were you thinking?
So I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, because I already worked in finance, which
Hmm.
is a male dominated industry in the 90s, and I did work in restaurants, which was and still is male dominated industry, in particular in the world of wine and spirits. I also realized that both with my real estate accreditation and my jewelry accomplishments, I was kind of feeling that I stopped learning and I needed to keep learning.
Hmm.
And what happened was I've done a bunch of really cool wine events in the past, mostly for friends, family, and friends of friends. And people have been telling me, friends have been telling me for a long time, you need to do something about this. This is
Okay.
fantastic. This is fabulous. This is your passion. Why don't you do something about it? And I always kind of treated it like, it's a fun hobby to have, but I'm
Hmm.
busy with other things. And when COVID hit, and I realized I had a lot of time, and I was reading a lot about wine, and kind of honing my skills and tasting a lot of wine at home and doing video conferencing with friends and blind tastings, I realized I really do need to go back to school, and I really do need to get this accreditation and certification to feel comfortable teaching others, because I was already teaching others, but I didn't feel, sometimes that little piece of paper just gives us the extra boost of confidence.
Yeah,
But I think it was also about the process of learning itself. I love learning new things. I love challenging myself. I think we truly die when we stop learning.
exactly.
And I think that, like you mentioned, your sister was just decided to go back to school and getting
Yeah.
her accreditation at 50 or 51 years old. There's always time for that. And actually, when I was in college in New York, there were these two older women coming to class, and they were, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but you don't need to pay the tuition. Of course, you're non-matriculated student, but there is a special, I guess, huge discount, or it's completely free if you're, I think they must have been in their 60s or maybe even 70s. And they were coming to all these classes and just
Wow.
taking notes like real students. And I was 20, 4 years old at the time. And I thought, how cool is that?
Wow.
How
Okay.
cool is that? And I was friendly with them. I was becoming friends with them. We sometimes would grab a coffee. And I thought, what a wealth of information and life experiences. And not just what you learn in school, but what you learn in school and how it applies in your life through the lens of your experiences.
Hmm.
And so I think the mistake that a lot of the industries are making is that they're not capitalizing on the fact that when you look at this 45 or 50-year-old woman who could be replaced, like you mentioned, by
Yeah.
the younger model might be able to work longer hours, but the younger model isn't coming with the wealth of experience and the wealth of knowledge that isn't necessarily covered in school in the books. So I
It's the
thought,
perspective, right? Like, what the fact that you went back to school for your sommelier certification is, and like you said, you were already kind of doing it, you were already teaching it, you were super knowledgeable about it, but what it gave you was different perspective, different dimension. Like I always talk
mhm,
about, you can be 2D, 3D, or 5D. Like, five dimensional just means that you've got so much depth and breadth and from all different angles. And then, you bring all this life experience in background, whether it's related to wine or not, you're still bringing this knowledge. And that's exactly what you're saying.
yes. And I think it's being more recognized little by
Mm-hmm.
little. And I think the times are changing, and I think people are working well into the 80s sometimes.
Hmm.
And I think it's going to be something that companies will be relying on more and more in the future.
Exactly.
So yeah, I always thought, my best friend is 10 years older than me, and we became friends when I was in my early 20s, right? So
Hmm.
unheard of.
Hmm.
Who in their early 20s hangs out with somebody who's 35 or 36 years old? It's like an
Right.
ancient person, right?
Exactly. Well,
And I
and also
thought,
it's so different. The maturity level is so
yes,
different. Like I
yes,
think once you get 30, then you can have a friend in your 40s and you kind of can relate. I know I have a lot of
yes,
younger friends that,
yes,
are 10, 15 years younger than me, and
yes.
I'm totally relatable to them, and they are for me too as well. So,
I absolutely adore working and talking with people who are older than me, but
hmm.
also people who are way younger than me. I think the perspective and just bridging all these three or four age groups or generations, if you will, is fascinating to me. And
Hmm.
especially in the world of wine and food, And when I was back in the classroom, that was very, it was one of the coolest experiences because there was actually another woman who was in her late 40s, who decided to go back for the certification. And there was a 60-year-old who has an extensive collection and has been, wine aficionado for many years.
Yeah,
But there were also 20-year-old kids, as I called them. And we had the best time because we were bridging the differences, and even in the wine description it was fascinating because my language was so different. And when we would work on the food and wine pairings, what I would come up with was so different from what the 20 or 25-year olds would come up with.
absolutely. Yeah.
It was really fascinating, and
Yeah.
I just love it. I think it's amazing. Food and wine, uh, it's present. Well, not just wine, but alcoholic beverages have been present in human history for
Hmm.
thousands of years, 6 7,000 years, right? So this is something that is, in my opinion, bridging the differences, not just cultural but age as well, and experience wise it's something present on every table in every household all around the world. And I find this fascinating.
And that's good. And the fact, so in part of your story was that people were telling you were doing it for fun, right? You were
Mhm.
hosting these
Yeah.
parties, these events, oh, let's put a different spin to it. You might have even had just a plain simple dinner party, but let's put a different spin on it, and let's do a bit of a wine tasting and different samples of wines and stuff. So, and people were telling you, wow, you should really be doing this full time. And sometimes we don't see something that we, as a hobby, as something that we could do until
Yeah.
we kind of wake up one day and go, oh, wait, hold on a second. I think I could actually do something that's passion filled and make a little bit of money off of
Yeah.
it and stuff. So, and that's one thing that even in my program, when I work in my group coaching program, when I work with women, the first thing I ask them, like when they're thinking about ideas for a business, is, well, what do people go to you for? What do people tell you that you're really good at? And you
Yes.
should listen to it, because that just comes naturally, and therefore you won't never you will always love what you do. Okay, so what I need to know though is, how are you actually making money? You've got the community group, and you're sharing your knowledge and you're mentoring really in this community group. But at the end of the day, we all want to make a little bit of money when we're starting our business. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, first of all, I believe in networking and I believe in surrounding yourself with the people who truly want to help you, want to see you shine. I've been very lucky. Um, I met both men and women in the industry who were more than happy to kind of point me in the right direction. Uh, but I think I mentioned to you before that I actually love art and I love going to art galleries. And I think of wine and food and the art of serving wine and food as art. So, very early on, when I started thinking, okay, so how am I going to make money here? Was with starting with different wine tastings and um, food and wine pairings in art galleries, and actually comparing the art to wine.
Okay.
That seemed to, yeah, that
I
seemed,
love that. So what did you
yes.
do? Just walk into this gallery and say, "Hey, gallery owner, can I?"
So,
Pretty
so you
much.
may have noticed I like to talk.
Yeah, I love it actually. It's been great. I've not even had to prompt you at all. You're an amazing guest.
Thank you. So actually, you develop relationships with people in stores, and you tell people that you love what they do, and then they typically ask you what you do, right? So
Mhm.
very few people say, "Oh, your job seems very boring." A lot of people
Yeah.
say, "Wow, this is fascinating. This is
How do I get
amazing.
started?
You get to drink wine for a living and you get paid." So one quick side note, Psalms actually don't consume a lot of wine. We are
Psalms, like
very
meaning sommeliers.
sommeliers. Yes,
Yeah,
we are
right. Okay.
very selective because obviously we go to a lot of tastings. We need to keep our
Mm.
palates sharp. But
Okay.
you do not want to swallow wine from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 p.m., 3, 4 times a week. That's would not be
Exactly.
good for you, for your health, etc. So we actually don't drink a lot of wine, which is funny. I probably drank more wine before I became a
Before.
sommelier. Now I'm very selective. But of course, we drink wine for fun as well. It's not always expensive bottles, and that's the great part of the of our job. We know what we're drinking. We know what to choose, right? But
Mhm.
yes, the art galleries. So people are fascinated by art and people are fascinated by wine, and why not put these two together? So that kind of was a very first idea that I had. We all go to
But take me, but
restaurants.
what, but walk me through that. Like, because I'm thinking to myself, if I was listening to this podcast, I would want to know, well, how did you? We clearly know you're super
Mhm.
confident, and and like you said, you create your own business,
Mhm.
and so, but like, how did you pitch it? Like, did you just like, was it a little proposal? Did you like, how did you approach to have this relationship and to do this
So,
sort of
so look,
collaboration?
if you ever went to a gallery opening, any gallery
Hmm.
opening, there is always some
Course.
really bad, really cheap wine
In plastic
which
glasses.
they serve in little plastic glass, right?
Hmm.
And so I actually know a couple of people who own galleries,
Okay.
and I only met them because I was walking in and admiring the art and talking to them about art. I actually
Right.
studied art for 2 years. Many years ago, but I enjoy art, and I always said, "Have you ever thought about doing a wine tasting and actually showing people the quality of art that you have here and comparing it to the quality of glass that you're serving, right?
Love it.
Even the glassware could be quality, right? It doesn't have to be a plastic glass, and it's not
Exactly.
such a huge effort. So people typically are very open to it because, yes, it's something that people don't think about because you know what? This is how it has been done, and nobody questions it, right? So when you
Hmm.
question how things have been done, you can make them better. The same thing with restaurants and and service workers. It's been very difficult for restaurants to find quality service workers after COVID. A lot of people left New York. I'm sure it's like this all over the United States, in particular in large cities. Um, it is crucial to offer not just amazing food, but also interesting wine list,
Hmm.
versatile wine list, and also have servers who knows what they're doing. So, training staff in restaurants, tweaking a wine list, helping add interesting buy to glass program, changing that wine list or tweaking it based on seasons is very important. And um, a lot of restaurant owners who understand the industry, they understand that. So maybe they cannot afford a beverage director full time or having a sommelier there full time, but maybe they can afford a consultant who can come once a month or every 2 weeks or every 2 months and teach the staff about the food that they sell and the appropriate wines that go with that food. Teach the staff how to open a bottle of wine properly. You would have thought everybody does, but a lot of people don't.
Hmm.
Teach the staff about appropriate temperature in which the wines should be served with appropriate food. Talk to them
Hmm.
about the preparation of the food, which is as important as the protein that's on the plate and the wine that's going to go with it. And these are things that would seem obvious to a lot of people that are not. And so you would be
No.
surprised when you talk to a manager or a floor manager, um, and and you arrange a meeting with the owner and the floor manager or the maitre d' or just the head server. They are very open to consulting. So
So I
that's
love
another.
everything. Yeah, I want to just stop you there for 2 seconds
Yes.
because you said something is like when you question how things have always been done, you can change it. And I just that's quotable
Yes.
because it's in anything, it's always like, why do we always have to just put up with the same thing? And so it's to your point, it's such a great quote. It's amazing. And so that's literally what you were doing. You were going to watch and observe and see how it was done and see how you would have done it differently,
Yeah.
maybe elevated that experience, and then you approached these owners of restaurants, galleries, whatever the case may be, but you looked at everything through the lens of what does it look like today? Question, why does it look like that?
Mhm.
Could it be changed? And then changing it.
Yep.
I just finished the book Unreasonable Hospitality, which is about the general manager from 11, 11 Madison.
Madison. Yep.
Yeah. What is the name of the restaurant?
11
11,
Madison.
11 Madison, yeah.
Yep.
So, and but when you were telling that story, I thought about him right away because that's exactly how they became a Michelin star
Mhm.
restaurant, is because
Mhm.
he questioned everything they were
Yes.
doing. And it was such a
Yes.
nice thing.
I
So,
always tell the story. I was just hired for a very fun wine tasting on Saturday for a small group of wine lovers. And the story that always gets everybody is, I ask a question. I like my parties to be fun, right? It's not just
mhm,
a lecture and a little steak and a little cabernet. No, no, no. We typically do something fun. So I said, how many of you have you been to weddings? Of course,
yeah,
everybody.
of course, everybody.
How many of you had the champagne toast served with the wedding cake? Everybody.
Right,
It's the worst thing you can do to the cake
right,
and to the champagne, right? So I
right.
always say, look, just because 500 other weddings had done that before doesn't mean you have to do the same, right? So it's about the power of entertaining and understanding what goes with what and what should be served first. What do you want to do at any party, at any event when you walk into the room, right? You want the wow effect. So what do? You serve your best at the very beginning, because they
Hmm.
were all expecting that we would move. This was a sparkling wine that we were doing, a journey through the sparkling wine world. And they were all expecting that I would start with Prosecco, move on to Cava, maybe
Yeah,
Franciacorta, and then
yeah,
finish with Champagne. And I did the
exactly.
opposite. I said, no, no, no. We're going to start with the big bang. We're going to do the best because I want your taste buds to be fresh and open. And I want you to understand the complexity of the best. And that's why you don't serve the best and the most complex wine with excuse me, sugary, buttery dessert. But
Right.
it's been done like this forever, and
Hmm.
people go along with it, and then everybody takes a bite of cake and sips that sip of champagne, and it's just awful, and nobody enjoys it.
You're saying that, and it reminds me of like, I used to host quite a few dinner parties back in the day, and I always serve the good wine first because as everybody gets drunker,
Yes,
nobody cares that it's a
yes,
40, 50, 60, maybe even a
yes,
$100 bottle of wine anymore. It's
yes,
a 10, $15 bottle of wine because no one can really taste the difference anyway. And it's
yes,
similar
yes,
story, right?
yes.
Start with the right thing right up front. I love it. I love it.
Always. And
Yeah.
also, very importantly, you people pay so much attention to the quality of food that they consume. We're all into organic and we all want the GMO free
Exactly.
and we don't want the pesticides, but people don't pay attention the same way to what they drink.
Hmm.
And I also don't understand that, because you want the same in your alcohol as you do,
Hmm.
right? So I see these crazy people on crazy diets and then they're drinking that 9.99 bottles of wine,
I
but
know. I
you don't
know.
think about the quality, right? So it's the same thing, just questioning what I have been doing forever,
Hmm.
and figuring out how to do things a little bit better
But
or
different.
different.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not
Yeah.
better, but maybe it's different. And in the end, the result is something that you didn't expect. You may be pleasantly surprised, right? Just like with the
I
wine.
love it. I love it. So, Adriana, tell me, what would you say to a woman in her 50s or beyond, even, sort of midlife? What would you say to her if she was struggling with, let's use an example of your community group, and you've got somebody there who is trying to do something similar as you,
Mhm.
but they, there's maybe don't have the confidence and, sort of the network, I guess, to
Mhm.
really make them feel confident and to get out there and do networking and grow. Like, what advice would you give to that woman to keep going?
So it takes a lot of inner strength for sure. And you need to prepare yourself for the letdowns, because there will be many. this is a given. It's You're not going to walk into the room and everybody's going to extend their hand and say, come, we'll take you. I've been in these situations over the past 5 years or 6 years, even many times.
Mhm.
um it's okay. You need to get yourself up back on your feet. First of all, you need to figure out what is it that you want, right? If you want
Mhm.
something very, very much, it's going to require a certain level of sacrifice. 100%. You may be very lucky and you may be, embraced by somebody who's going to just make everything wonderful and it's going to happen overnight. But chances are that this is one in a million, and you're going to have to
Mhm.
do a little bit of legwork and a little bit of networking, and maybe smile at people sometimes who don't have your best interest
Right.
in mind. But that's all right. I truly believe that if you follow your heart and if you follow the drive, if you wake up at age 48 or 52 and you say, what, I want to be a wine writer, or I want to do my own podcast, or whatever it may be, um, you already have enough knowledge and experience from life and past experiences to know this is not going to be all rosy, right? So
Exactly.
prepare yourself for that. Right?
Mhm.
This is the beauty. Like in our 20s, we think, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I'm just going to move to New York and it's going to be
Exactly.
amazing.
And you know what? You can bump up against a few brick walls a little bit because you think, ah, shit, I got lots of time. But I think that we as we get older, we see it as a big risk. But the
Hmm.
risk is not taking the risk. And to your point about the, if you want to start a podcast or whatever the case may be, it's like there are days where you think, okay, you know what, I can't, like, I'll tell you honestly, from my perspective of this is 50 Freedom Through Passion, it was like, what am I going to do? I'm at 30 episodes now. What am I going to do with it? And every year I sit down and do a bunch of planning. And I thought, no, you know what? I actually really like doing the podcast. I love
Yeah.
speaking with everyday women who are just making shit happen.
Yeah.
And it's such an amazing thing to hear the stories behind each one of them because you're so relatable, and
Yeah.
everybody can find themselves in your story or somebody else's story. And my hope is that it just connects and resonates and allows you to go out and pursue your dreams. But there are days where I think, holy cow, like, oh my God, this is a lot of work. It's,
Yeah.
I got to do this. And then I got to find people to be on this podcast that fit the mold of what I'm
Of
trying to
course.
do. So it's not easy, right?
Yes.
But it's pursuing your passions and it's taking those risks. And
Yes.
yeah, I love everything you're saying.
I think the most important thing is to have a few people. In my case, I always gravitated towards women, who will pick you up on those days, who will tell you, you know what, you're doing great, but
Hmm.
not in a way, in a superficial way, oh, you're so
Right.
great. No. Yes, we all have bad days. Yes, we all have our doubts. Yes, it's never going to be super easy. But if you have the few people that believe in you and pick you up and help you pick yourself up, right? After maybe a
Hmm.
disappointment, or somebody turns out not to be the person you thought they were going to be, or the connection just fell through, or whatever it may be, or the computer isn't cooperating, you know,
Exactly.
you never know, the little frustrations, right? It's very important to surround yourself with, in my case, women who are who will shine their light on the days when I feel at my darkest,
Exactly.
because I do the same thing for them, right? And so
Absolutely.
I think if you have a couple of sounding boards who are honest and real and will truly give you their opinions, to help you maybe overcome certain roadblocks, whatever they may be, I think that makes a huge difference. And it could be anybody.
Yeah,
It could be a parent, could be, husband, partner, child, or just a best friend, right? But it's
exactly.
important to have one or two of these people. This would be the advice. And I would say, you know what? Go for it. Don't
Yeah.
listen to all the critics. Oh my God, how many people told me, oh, what are you doing? Do you really need to? Why? And, you should just enjoy your life and you've earned it.
Mhm.
And no, I'm not ready. And I don't even know if
Right.
this is my last career. This may not be my last career.
Exactly.
And in a way, I like to prove people wrong. So
Yeah.
have a little bit
A
have a
little
little
bit
bit of
of
this kind of, you know what? I'm still gonna do it. Whether you have my best interest in mind or not, I am still going to do it.
exactly,
So
exactly.
I think it's just the right attitude, where you wake up in the morning and you just plow right through the day.
Yeah, and then on those days where you're feeling like, oh, then take the day. Just relax. Just walk
100%.
away from it, and
100%.
exactly, exactly.
You need to show
Adriana, you
yourself
have
some
been
grace. Yes, show yourself
yeah,
some grace.
show yourself some grace. Absolutely. And we're going to end on that because it's such a beautiful note. Where do people find you? Where should we send people?
So I'm very active on Instagram.
Hmm.
I am in process of creating additional pages with additional information, but Instagram I'm super responsive.
Hmm.
So awesome wine, underscore some wine on
Okay.
Insta, and yeah, as you can see, I'm posting quite a bit recently.
Yeah, yeah, it's been great.
So lots of fun facts and information. You can always shoot me a message, and I can always make a nice recommendation. So
Well,
um,
that's exactly where I'm headed next. So,
yes, please,
um,
I'm
I,
waiting.
I, I've really enjoyed your champagne post for sure because I'm a little bit like, I think, God, do you always have to drink $100 bottle of champagne or
No,
higher? Like, there's
no,
got to be, a decent $25 bottle of champagne out there, So,
there
yeah,
are, there
yeah,
are. 100%. I would
exactly.
say the really exquisite entry level champagnes start around 40.
Right.
You could find them. There are more and more smaller producer champagnes that show up in the
Of
market.
course. Yeah.
Definitely look out for that. And when you go to a restaurant, ask the somm. Don't be afraid of the somm. We're not trying to sell you the most expensive bottle of wine. We
Right.
are trying to have a repeat
Please you.
customer. We want you to
Exactly.
be happy. We would love for you to tell us how much you want to spend, what you're going to eat, and we want to make it the most enjoyable experience because we want you to be back. So don't be
Exactly.
afraid to ask the somm. Always ask the somm.
I love it. All right, let's leave everybody with your beautiful quote. When you question something, you have to question how things have always been done and then figure out a way to change it.
That's right.
It's an amazing. Thank you so much. I hope to talk to you soon and one day I hope to
Thank
see you
you.
in New York. Okay, take
Thank you
care.
very much.
Thank you.